Rabies. You already know the word, which is exactly why we start here, because almost nobody knows what it actually does to a person. Rabies doesn't travel in your blood, it crawls up your nerves, slowly toward the brain, which is why a bite can sit silent for weeks, and then it arrives and takes the wheel. A calm, gentle person becomes agitated, terrified, aggressive. Saliva floods because swallowing becomes impossible. And then the signature symptom, hydrophobia, a raw animal panic at the mere sight of water. Once those symptoms begin, rabies is essentially 100% fatal. A literal handful of people in recorded history have ever survived it. Here's the part that stays with you. Every old legend of a person turning into a snarling, biting monster, werewolves, the possessed, was probably describing this. Rabies is the closest thing biology ever built to demonic possession. And it's real. There are at least a dozen conditions that don't just hurt you. They reach into the brain and change who you are, and they don't arrive in a neat line, worst to last, so don't get comfortable. Cotard's Delusion, the walking corpse. From the most famous straight to the strangest, a person with Cotard's is calm, lucid, and utterly convinced of one thing, that they are dead. Not depressed, not speaking in metaphor, they believe their organs are rotting, that they have no blood, no brain, that they're a corpse that simply hasn't stopped moving. Some stop eating. Why would a dead body need food? The first documented patient starved herself, insisting she was already gone, and it folds somewhere darker. Some conclude that because they've already died, they must be immortal, unkillable. Try arguing with that. Every reassurance you offer, they've already accounted for. How do you convince someone they're alive when the one thing they've stopped believing in is themselves? Frontotemporal Dementia. This one doesn't touch your memory at all. It goes straight for the personality, often in your 50s. The facts stay, names, dates, addresses intact. What leaves is the person. A devoted, mild-mannered father starts shoplifting and feels nothing. A gentle woman turns cold and crude, a stranger at her own table. He can still recite his kids' names. He just no longer acts like the man who loved them. And there's a cruel early window where he's aware enough to watch the edits happening and powerless to stop them. It doesn't burn down the library. It keeps every book on the shelf and quietly replaces the author. Fatal familial insomnia. If you remember only one of these, make it this one. It's genetic, untreatable, and it kills you by taking away sleep. It begins with trouble falling asleep, and then that trouble becomes total. The switch in the brain that hands you over to unconsciousness simply breaks and the person stops sleeping. Not for a night, for months. And a mind with no sleep does not stay a mind. Panic, paranoia, hallucinations, a slow dissolving of who they are. Awake for every second of it, unable to escape into rest even once. There's no cure and no pause. Over about a year, the person is worn down to nothing, conscious nearly to the end. It's the rarest kind of horror, a disease that kills you by stealing the one thing every other living creature gets for free. Wilson's disease. After that, a gentler one, because it comes with hope. Most poisons come from outside you. This one you brew yourself. Your body needs a trace of copper, but a genetic fault means you can't clear the excess, so it builds up, liver first, then brain. When it reaches the brain in your teens or 20s, it can look exactly like a personality unraveling. Mood swings, depression, impulsiveness, sometimes psychosis. Countless young people have been written off as troubled or going off the rails when the real culprit was a metal quietly stacking up inside their skull. But here's the mercy. Catch it and you can pull the copper back out and get the person back. A strange reminder that sometimes the monster wearing your loved one's face isn't a demon or even their character. It's a mineral. Anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis. Now the attacker is you. For no clear reason, your own immune system decides your brain is the enemy and attacks it. A healthy young person, often a woman in her 20s, abruptly develops paranoia, hallucinations, violent outbursts, seizures. For decades, people like this were diagnosed as schizophrenic and locked away centuries earlier, called possessed and handed to exorcists. We now know some never needed a priest. They needed immune treatment, and caught in time it can fully reverse, the person coming all the way back as if nothing happened. Which raises a haunting question. How many of the possessed, screaming in restraints across history, were simply sick with something a hospital could fix in a week? Some of history's demons had a cure, or we just hadn't invented it yet. Korsakoff Syndrome. This one doesn't erase your memory, it replaces it with fiction and never tells you. Usually caused by a severe lack of vitamin B1, often after years of heavy drinking, it destroys the brain's ability to form new memories, but the brain hates a blank, so it fills them in. It's called confabulation. Ask a patient what they did today and they'll tell you, fluently, confidently, in detail, about a trip they never took, a conversation that never happened, an afternoon that doesn't exist. And they aren't lying. They believe it completely. Their brain would rather invent a reality than admit there's a gap, which is uncomfortable because every memory you have is partly reconstructed too. Korsakoff patients just do out loud what your brain quietly does every day. Fill in the blanks and call it the truth. Huntington's disease. Almost everything here ambushes you. This one mails a warning decades early. It's genetic and brutally clean. If your parent carries the gene, you get a 50-50 coin flip, and a single test can tell you years ahead whether it's coming. Long before the famous involuntary movements begin, Huntington's changes the mind. Irritability, rage, depression, reckless choices that dismantle a life the person doesn't yet know is ending. Picture watching your mother change, learning it was Huntington's, and realizing there's a 50% chance you're staring at your own future on delay. This is why many people at risk choose never to take the test, because some knowledge doesn't help you prepare. It just starts the clock early. General paresis of the insane. For most of history, one of the leading causes of madness wasn't a curse because it was an infection nobody treated. When syphilis goes unchecked for years, it can reach the brain and rewrite the personality, soaring grandiosity, euphoria, wild delusions of being rich, brilliant, godlike. Whole wings of 19th century asylums were filled with people living out the last act of an untreated infection, certain they were emperors. Historians suspect it quietly shaped real careers of artists and rulers whose late-life brilliance or paranoia may have been an infection eating through the cortex. Then penicillin arrived, and this cause of insanity all but vanished overnight. A humbling thought, some of history's great eccentrics may not have been touched by genius or by evil. They were just infected. Capgras Delusion. And the most quietly devastating of all, a person with Capgras looks at their husband, their mother, their own child, recognizes the face perfectly, and is dead certain it isn't really them, that an identical imposter has taken their place. The reason is chillingly logical. Recognizing a face and feeling the warmth attached to it run on two separate wires, and in Capgras the second wire is cut. So they see their wife, the face matches, but the familiar rush of love never arrives, and the mind, desperate to explain why she feels wrong, lands on the only story that fits. This must be a fake. It's love with the feeling surgically removed, reinterpreted as a conspiracy. Everyone you hold dear replaced by flawless copies, and you're the only one who can tell. The one we still can't explain. Everything so far has been one brain, one person, one mechanism we can mostly name. This last one took hundreds of people at once, and 5 centuries later nobody can tell you why. July 1518. In Strasbourg, a woman steps into the street and begins to dance. No music, no reason, and she doesn't stop. Not that night, not the next day. Within a week, dozens have joined her. Within a month, as many as 400 people are dancing in the streets and cannot stop. Accounts describe them dancing until they dropped. Some, it was said, until they died, of strokes, heart attacks, sheer exhaustion. And the strangest detail, the city's leaders decided the afflicted simply had to dance it out once, so they cleared a hall, hired musicians, brought in professional dancers to keep the rhythm going. It made things worse. Then, as suddenly and senselessly as it began, it stopped. What was it? A poisoning from ergot, a hallucinogenic mold on damp rye, a mass madness born of famine and dread, hundreds of minds breaking in unison? We have guesses. We do not have an answer. 500 years later, the dancing plague of Strasbourg is still exactly what it was that summer. An entire town's minds hijacked by something we cannot name. Every other entry in this video we can at least explain. This one just happened. And whatever it was, it didn't come for one of you. It came for all of them at once. That's the list. If it got under your skin, do 2 quick things. Hit that like button and subscribe. And here's a real reason to... I'm putting together a giveaway, and the first 1,000 subscribers get entered automatically. No comments, no hoops, you're just in. So subscribe now while that number's still low. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, take care of that brain. It's doing far more than it's telling you.